Hi, this is Raj Dorsami. I am here live at the FPEA Homeschool Convention. 29,000 families are supposed to be at this event. It's an epic event, but I want to talk with you about something very specific, very timely. And as you may know, June has historically been announced as Pride Month. Some people have a different plan. And to talk to us about that, I have here Robert Goodman, who is with Citizens Defending Freedom. Robert, how are you today?
I'm doing great.
So, Robert, I want to just ask you a couple of questions. Let's go right into your plans for June. Talk to us about it.
So Citizens Defending Freedom is doing a fatherhood appreciation kit. It will be available to churches. It will be available to families. It will be available to elected officials. There is a fatherhood criteria, and we're going to give you all the tools so that your county can make June Fatherhood Appreciation Month. We even have statements written for public officials, and we want fatherhood proclamations all over the United States, in your cities, your schools, your governor, your county commission, all the way up to the President of the United States. And we will have all those resources under citizensdefendingfreedom.com. Under the Faith tab, there will be a toolkit that will launch on June 3rd, and all of these resources will be available to anyone absolutely free.
And Robert, you've mentioned briefly the connection between fatherhood and the Pride Month. Can you explain a little bit more about why you've connected those two and why one affects the other?
Well, the father, if you look at TV sitcoms, you look at television, the father is underappreciated. You can't find a strong father on television. And if you look, fathers, a lot of children are in fatherless homes. And where fatherlessness exists, that's where crime exists. It's where childhood depression exists. And when you download our toolkit, you'll see how a strong father changes the outcome for children. So I understand some people want to have a Pride Month. That's fine. What we want to have is we want the focus of the United States to be fatherhood and appreciating fathers in June.
What I love about that, Robert, is fathers impact every family, orientation, ethnicity, socioeconomic class. Everybody is affected. And unfortunately, with fatherlessness, this is creating a massive cascade of problems. I want to change gears now and talk about your work in schools. So your team has actually been very much at the forefront of alerting legislators about what's going on in schools. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. Around 2021, there started to be a national awareness that there was a lot of inappropriate adult content in school libraries. And anyone that brought it up was immediately called a book banner or all kinds of names. And it's a really simple argument. You can't show The Hangover in a high school. You shouldn't be able to. You can't show an X-rated movie or a hard R-rated movie in a high school. Yet there's books with graphic sex, graphic rape, pedophilia, bestiality that are available in schools to children 13 and up. That might be fine content for adults, but it shouldn't be available without parental permission in schools for minor children. So many organizations, including Citizens Defending Freedom, started sounding the alarms and letting people know what was in. In my county, we brought attention to it for 3 years. We never got a result. We never got one book removed after 3 years. So last year, we hired an attorney, Anthony Sabatini, and we sued the Polk County School Board. That lawsuit is still pending, but we didn't stop there. While that lawsuit's working its way, we had people help write legislation for the state of Florida. The way pornographic content is able to stay in schools is because of a 1972 or 1973 Supreme Court ruling called Miller versus California. It was a case about adult pornography being mail ordered, but when that got to the Supreme Court, who ruled against Miller ultimately, they said that if a book had graphic sex in it, as long as it had literary value, it was okay for adults. That clause, and in that Supreme Court ruling, they said this ruling is vague because each community needs to decide their own community standards. There had already been precedent with Ginsburg versus New York that children do not have a right or ability to see pornography. But over the last 50 years, that's been ignored, and everybody is focused on the Miller test. So we wrote legislation, or our attorneys worked with the state of Florida to write legislation to say that it is fine to look at literary value for adults, but overcoming a graphic rape scene with the woman survives the rape and saying that book gives people who've been raped empowerment. No, the child will be harmed by learning about a graphic rape at 13 years old. So literary value might be fine for adults, but it shouldn't apply to children. Now, that legislation wasn't going to be heard by the Florida House or the Florida Senate, and we drove people to Tallahassee, and we created a document called What's in the Polk County School Systems, What's in the Hillsborough County School Systems. It's available on our website now under tools as to what's in the Florida schools, and you can see the examples of what's there. We brought that to all the legislators as well as real-time results of what happened at actual book challenges in schools, where they could see that over and over what kept the books in schools was, yes, this book's graphic, but it has literary value. So it's just about taking that piece out for minors. It's fine to stay for adults. So the biggest people that didn't believe in that, once they saw what was in the schools, not only did they back the legislation, we even got co-sponsors who were against it. Once they saw the content, joined the bill. It ultimately passed the Florida House 81-29. The Florida Senate did not hear it, but wait, there's more. After the legislative session was over, the House sent our What's in the Hillsborough County School System document to Manny Diaz from the Department of Education. He's bringing the superintendent from the Tampa schools over to the state school board meeting in Miami on June 4th to answer to why this pornographic content has stayed in schools. Attorney General Uthmeyer demanded that the 5 books that were referenced that were from our document in Manny Diaz's letter were removed. They were removed the next day. That has also happened in Escambia County. And when we go to this school board meeting, we're going to let the state school board and the Department of Education know they need to reach out to the Florida Senate, bring it up in the fall term, and get this legislation passed and end this problem and let kids learn what's important: reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Congratulations, Robert, to your team for persevering. And I'm inspired by how even when you had some resistance, you didn't give up, you kept working, you got other people involved. I want to just hover on that a moment, because what you ran into with the Senate, in particular one senator, is very much the same problem that people who are trying to get election reform passed, health freedom passed, parental rights passed, and that is high-ranking officials like senators and House members on occasion deny that the problem even exists, either because they don't know, which might be incompetency, or maliciously trying to redirect and misdirect the public. So could you talk a little bit about what that experience was like when you had the conversation with the senator that you had mentioned earlier before this interview?
So that was a senator who used to work for the Florida Department of Education. And she said, what we have here is not a problem that needs to be solved legally. You have a school board problem. You need to flip your school board. You need to do anything, but we don't need another law. So she tried to block it to the Senate. Now, it did eventually get blocked in the Senate. We don't know if it was this senator or if it was someone else, or the Senate just ran out of time. There were budget issues. We'll probably never know what it actually was. But she was, I can't tell you, that was the most frustrating experience I've ever had in Tallahassee, because she was confrontive, combative, and almost got aggressive in my face saying that it wasn't a problem that could be solved. I'm in the field. I'm out talking to parents. I'm talking to grandparents. I'm talking to citizens. I'm putting out publications that show what content is in the schools. If you look at our What's in the Florida Schools document, it's undeniable. There's not one person in the United States that can look at the content in there and tell you it's appropriate for a 13-year-old. So it doesn't matter who tells me that there's not a problem there. There's a problem there, and we need to fight for it until it's resolved.
Robert, you have just been very consistent, very persistent. And there was actually a story about how a legislator that didn't want to hear what you had to say actually turned their mind and turned their heart and became one of your advocates for this. Talk to me about that.
The House rep wasn't interested in hearing the bill. We went in with the documents to her office. We didn't really expect to see her because when somebody's against a bill, they don't want to talk to you. We were speaking to her legislative aide in her office, and her legislative aide told us we couldn't see the House member. She overheard the conversation, and we were telling her the content that was in books and showing her what actually happened in review committees. And the House member came out to talk to us. And that House member actually brought the bill before the floor that day. And this is the person who was blocking it. And at the end of that session said, I don't only believe in this, but this is the most important piece of legislation before the House this time. So she voted for it then. It went to the next committee. She photocopied our documents and sent them to everyone in the House and the Senate. And that's how it actually wound up getting to FDOE. So just because someone says no, you just have to keep pushing forward. You never give up. The things that are wrong in this country, we need citizens, just like the people listening to this show, to pick up, get off their sofa, get involved. Anybody can make a difference. If I can make a difference, you can make a difference. So that's what we need from citizens. Get up, get involved. You can get involved with great organizations like Defend Florida, like Citizens Defending Freedom, like Turning Point USA, like Moms for Liberty, Moms for America. Find your local organization. Get your pastor involved. Get your church involved. Take a biblical citizenship class on your sofa at your church. We have tons of resources for you, and they're free. Let us help you help save America.
Robert, thanks for talking with us. If people want to know more about the work you're doing and the work of your organization, how do they find out more?
So you can go to Citizens Defending Freedom. You should be able to click on About, find out the information we have out specific for your state. We also have a faith page. I am the faith director for the state of Florida. So if you go to the faith page, we have resources. That's where you'll find our fatherhood toolkit. And if you go to Florida, that's where you'll find our document about what's in Florida schools. And if you stay tuned, there'll be a document for every state that we're in with what's in your schools as well. citizensdefendingfreedom.com.
Hi, this is Raj Doraisamy with Coastal Conservative News. I am here at the Homeschool Convention in Orlando, Florida. 29,000 people are expected to be here. The keynote speaker here is going to be John Lovell, and he is the CEO and founder of the Warrior Poet Society. Now, if you're like me, the first time you read that, you're like, what is that all about? My friends, this is going to be something really interesting for you to watch. And here is John. John, tell me a little bit about why you founded this organization and what your principles are in being here at this homeschool convention.
Sure. So Warrior Poet Society embodies two different main archetypes that dudes are supposed to embody both in, warrior and poet. Our contention is that dudes shouldn't be lovers or fighters. You should really be both. And so the long-suffering, tough, strong, gritty, brave aspects of warrior are brought to bear, and then also poet, and that's romance, it's deep waters, it's lovers of truth and beauty. And so we draw that out. We're fundamentally a masculinity movement, but we're teaching all kinds of things like gunfighting around the country and security-based stuff. I've got a best-selling book that a lot of people are getting their hands on, which is real fun. And I talk about issues of family and faith and freedom and fighting. The whole gamut, lots of cool dude stuff, but Warrior Poet Society.
John, one of the things that we've noticed in working with all kinds of organizations, from the faith movement to the civic engagement movement to the business movement, is there just seems to be a lack of manly leadership or masculinity. It seems like our society is being architected to try to snuff that out and make it a villain. Could you comment a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's the classic sin of Adam, and that's to be passive. A beta, limp-wristed, effete male who just watches everything go by. And in order to just keep the peace, you don't say anything. And that's a shame. The righteous are as bold as lions. So if you're not as bold as a lion, you're not righteous. You're nothing like Jesus. You're not a strong man. You're not a leader. And so our goal isn't to just keep the peace, but to be able to be a cultural agent for change, to be able to speak the truth, even if it steps on people's toes. We let people too quickly cudgel us using our own good-hearted compassion and sympathy against us as a muzzle, a politically correct muzzle. And it'll be the death of our country. It'll be the death of our families if you keep allowing yourselves to be bullied. And we say, hey, real dudes, stand up, hold the line, and speak the truth, even if it upsets people. Everything is at stake if you don't. And so man up and quit being a bunch of crybaby betas.
John, I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to go a little bit more specifically with conservative leaders and conservative folks who want to do the right thing, but they don't want to make a noise. They don't want to be a nuisance. They want to comply. They want to follow the rules. And unfortunately, as we can see with what happened in COVID and what happened with the previous administration, that kind of attitude accelerates the erosion of our individual freedoms. So for people that are wired to comply, to be nice, to frown on making a ruckus, what would you say to those folks?
I'm not a fan of politicians usually. A lot of times they'll promise great cultural change, but then they take the big briefcase of money and then they push nothing through. They renege on all the good campaign promises that they made to be able to make absolutely no change whatsoever. And so it's infuriating. Either they're corrupt and took the briefcase of money, or they're abject cowards and they won't speak the truth. And so I think times are long past for people to be able to play coy or be apathetic. It's absolutely critical. Our leaders should be able to find spines and actually be able to push truth forward. For the person that's not in political office, because you mentioned both our leaders and then just the normal kind of day in, day out guy, it's not okay for us either to play the part of cowards. We need to speak the truth. Say the truth. Nice isn't really a virtue to me. I think kind is, but nice will lie just to keep the peace. Nice will be like, yeah, do whatever, go along with everything. What I want is kind, and kind speaks the truth in love. So I want to be loving, but you can't have real love if you don't speak the truth. It's tied together, and I'm tired of the weak, false virtue counterfeit that embodies nice.